What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of T-Dub's Film Room, brought to you by thebarnauburn.com. We're back for a commit breakdown video. This time, an offensive tackle that I might be alone in saying could be an immediate impact player. Let's dive right in. All right, Wilson Zierer, the younger brother of Killian Zire, who was, I believe, a two-year starter at Auburn. 6'6", 280 listed right now. Offensive tackle for sure. Rivals industry 3-star. Rivals likes him a little bit better there. 238 nationally, which is a solid ranking. 4-star. ESPN kind of behind there, and then 247 as a 3-star. Look, beating out Alabama and beating out Florida State, who's not listed in his top teams, but also Michigan was involved. Georgia was involved at one time. I even think, that was kind of the buzz from the people that cover it from that standpoint. Just in terms of protection, I think Georgia, wanted him quite a bit. So if you're talking about Auburn, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, Florida State, being the top suitors involved, that's a 4-star offensive tackle. Okay, so let's get to the tape. There's a lot really to get to. There's a lot to like, but I mean, look, rating or not aside, this was a guy that a lot of people liked. And so yeah, let's take a look at what we got. All right, so here's his high school here. Again, 6'6", 280. There's a couple of things that kind of jump off to me. One of the things that, is not necessarily as specific to Wilson. So here he is playing right tackle, and we've got plenty of reps here that we can break down, but you can just kind of watch while we're taking kind of the overview here. But if you look kind of across this line of scrimmage, and you can see some of the damage he's doing on that right side. And I like this. He's kind of pointing out like, hey, here's some of the guys that I'm going against. I'm going against a 4-star right here. And I just kind of, walk him out to the numbers as I'm, my teammate scoring a touchdown behind me. This is a good example of some stuff that I want to point out. But what I was going back to is the offensive line here, man. There's like a lot of dudes that look pretty good. And I mean, Georgia football is great competition. I don't know that much about the high school, just to be honest, if they're like a really highly touted high school or whatever, but there's a couple of things that I really like, even just not just him personally or individually as a player. I like the fact that he's kind of in a group here with, it looks like a lot of guys that know what they're doing, good size, they're very, physical, and then some of the stuff that he can do individually, like this right here. All right, boom, I know what I'm doing. I'm hitting that guy. I'm turning my back and kind of cleaning that up. The athleticism and agility and the footwork and just the athlete that he is, putting this on display here for this little nifty little reverse, hunting that guy up. I guess what I'm trying to say here at the beginning is what I see from watching all of this, and there's 7 minutes of this, is I see a group here on offense, like their offensive line group, that generally tries to have good technique, that looks like they know what they're trying to accomplish play to play. And he definitely exemplifies that on every play. That's taken all the physical attributes aside. All right. But it's really important, I think, especially in what Hugh is trying to build offensively, that your offensive line is a bunch of smart guys. Typically your offensive linemen are pretty smart guys. But I think it's really important with what Hugh's trying to do specifically. If you just think about it like this, if you played, NCAA football on the, video games, and if you're running like RPO stuff and you get a bunch of offensive linemen downfield, right? Because maybe they don't pay attention. They don't know that it's an RPO play. So then they're climbing to the second level. They're 7 yards downfield. You get a nice shot play, and it comes back because your offensive lineman doesn't know not to climb as high because it could be a potential forward pass, stuff like that. Okay. There's just some stuff about what these guys are doing, and it just looks cohesive, and it looks like they know what they're doing. And Wilson obviously is a part of that, that I really just enjoyed, watching this. I think they're coached well, so I think it's probably a pretty good high school. I rewinded to stop here, all right? But that was just kind of a broad point I wanted to make. Now, Wilson as a prospect, there's a couple of things. If we rewind this a little bit, and if you've watched some of our other videos, we've pointed this out, but I think just right off the screen here, one of the first things that you can try to do to evaluate an offensive line prospect out of high school is look at his natural mobility, his natural positioning, I guess, that his biomechanics that he can put his body in. That's a flat back. All right, that's good knee bend and hip bend here. So his position, his ability to just be in a good football position is good. And that matters when you're talking about 6'6", 280, still growing into your body, coordination, all that kind of stuff. I think that matters. And then if you really pay attention to what he's doing on this play, being in that good stance and being able to fire out of that good stance is really, really important here. So what he's doing is kind of bluffing that edge defender, and then he is running out here and getting in the way of like a screenplay. That was one of the most impressive reps to me on his entire film. Just the athleticism required. And then again, the coaching, the bluff, he almost fakes like I'm going to cut block that guy. And that's that 4-star guy that he had kind of pointed out earlier. So couple of just, maybe his top traits here, and even going back to like the NCAA football game kind of example, his archetype here, you have like pass protector, well-rounded, mauler, run blocker, some of that kind of stuff. I see him as like the agile archetype, and he could be well-rounded, but man, he's quick on his feet, and I don't think he's ever going to necessarily be like some nasty, right tackle mauler type. I don't think that's, it's pretty obvious that's not necessarily who he is. I think from a pass protection standpoint, and look, there's not that many reps here of just, your traditional 2-point, kick step, pass set type look. There's not that many reps. A lot of this is screen work. A lot of it's, even just run blocking. I like some of the double team work that we see here, climbing up second level, stuff like that, the solo blocks. So that's what most of it that we get. I think this might be, okay, no. So there's a couple of end zone views, I think, from this game where he's, pass setting. I think that's going to be fine. I think because he's such a good athlete, I think he's going to be a good pass blocker. Obviously his length is there, his frame looks great. But I think for, again, what Hugh and what Jake Thornton are trying to accomplish, I think from the offensive line perspective, if you think about the RPO scheme, what your offensive linemen need to be able to do, a lot of zone blocking, all right, you need to be able to move, all right, because, again, we're not necessarily counting on the offensive linemen to just move people vertically off the ball. We're not doing a ton of like, double team climb, power gap scheme type stuff. I mean, they're attached to RPOs quite a bit, but I think the most important thing that they want are big guys that move well, and then they'll kind of start there and go. So, I could definitely see him developing into a left tackle. I really like him as a right tackle. I don't know that it matters a whole lot in terms of, this isn't 1981 where you have a quick guard and a strong guard. You don't have linemen that have specific roles. You're going to run to the right. You're going to run to the left. You're going to, have to pass protect on both sides of the line of scrimmage as well. So, I don't know if it matters a whole lot. I think when looking at the depth chart and how he could fit in, I'm going to be honest, beyond his rating here, if you think about a guy like Connor Lew was a 3-star. And I think everybody could look and see, look, man, this guy looks clean on film. This guy looks like a guy that, if his body can handle it, which you'll find out in spring ball and summer and fall camp because these guys come in so early now, if the body can hold up physically, like, I don't think he's going to have any issue from even like acclimating to the technique requirements. I think he's going to pick that up well. He's not going to be a perfect product coming out of high school, but I think he's going to pick it up well. Obviously having his older brother to help him out, I think probably helps him out a lot too. And then, I just think he's going to be able to have kind of the smarts to pick up everything he needs to as well. So I actually see him as a guy that, not that you ever want a tackle to start in his true freshman year, and not even physically that he'll be able to, but I see him as a guy that's going to be in the 2 deep his true freshman season. I think that's who he's going to be. I think his ceiling's really high because there's not really a lot of downside. I don't know if he has the longest arms ever for an offensive tackle. We could be dealing with like a Jonah Williams situation a few years back where, he was playing in Alabama and probably the top right tackle prospect. But he was dealing with the arm length and stuff like that. I think, maybe that could be the case here. It's hard to tell exactly, but I don't see a lot of stuff that would really say, well, he has to work on this specifically or, whatever. I mean, he's clean. He's good at pass pro. He's good at run blocking. He's got his stuff that he's, his best at, like his movement skills and that kind of stuff and his technique. But I really like the pickup, man. And you talk about recruiting, just kind of the narrative. You got a guy, Killian Zire, that played at Auburn, started a couple of years, and you had his younger brother that's, basically going to be a 4-star offensive tackle, I think, by the time it's all said and done. Not a guy you would want to lose, and a guy that it was looking like Auburn was probably going to lose there for a minute. All right, so you see him working there. But, yeah, huge pickup for Auburn. Again, I think I might be alone in saying this, but I would say that I'd be surprised if he wasn't in the 2 deep. Especially just considering how it's working now. You can't just go fill up rooms, because of money. Like, you have to treat it like a salary cap to some extent. I would be shocked if he wasn't in the 2 deep next season, assuming he signs with Auburn. So huge pickup. Let's look at a comp. I think I have a really good one, and a guy that you might recognize. All right, so this is some random point of, you can kind of see 2018 Auburn offense versus Tennessee defense. All right. The comp here is going to be number 71, Jack Driscoll, right tackle. And you could have made an easy comp from Wilson to his brother Killian, and that's fine. I was actually going back. I was probably going to do that. That wasn't a very good play. I was going to do that, but I was looking through Killian's stuff, and I was like, I think Jack Driscoll was a lot better, just from my memory. And so I was watching some of Jack's stuff. Jack was good, man. He was good. You had him and Prince Tega at the tackle position there. Pretty solid, relatively for us. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, all right, tell me about Jack Driscoll's career at Auburn, just so I could kind of confirm what I was thinking. So he started every game 2018, 2019, right tackle. Jarrett Stidham dubbed him a freak of an athlete, given his size and agility at 6'5", 300. By the end of his Auburn tenure, his 45 straight FBS starts ranked among the most in the nation among linemen. I never really realized that. But then, look, he was a 4th-round draft pick with the Eagles. 2020 through 2023, he played in 54 games and started 17, some at right tackle, some at right guard. He got moved to the Dolphins, where he played center and right guard, so he's moved around a little bit. But, just in terms of, again, Jack Driscoll's main thing was his athleticism, right? You kind of see him getting out there and moving. I was saying Wilson, his best attribute at this point is his agility, his movement, with his frame. Obviously, there's some level of physicality that you have to be able to make it at this level. So, you just have that prerequisite. But his movement and his agility and, his athleticism, I think those are the things that, stood out for Jack Driscoll while he was at Auburn. I think those are the things that stand out to me for Wilson. And then, look, we've had issues at Auburn, up and down with the tackle position. Okay. Jack Driscoll was a guy, again, a mid-round draft pick that has had a solid NFL career. If I'm saying Wilson Zierer projects to somebody like that, could have that type of career path, I think that's really great, man. And, we're trying to stack this group when Hugh has basically had Dylan Wade, a 6'3" offensive lineman who played left tackle. He had Percy Lewis that he had to deal with, and now you're looking out there with Xavier Chaplin, who obviously I'm super high on, maybe higher than anybody else. And then Mason Murphy and Too Tall on the other side. And then you think about the future of that group with guys like Wilson, guys like Tyler Johnson, guys like Favor Edwin, hopefully that can develop, but they have the actual NFL traits. You're actually starting with somebody who's not limited by their frame, by their traits, by maybe their athleticism and stuff like that. You're starting with guys that could make it in the NFL if they can develop properly. And Wilson continues that. And I think he's going to be in the 2 deep. His freshman season, his true freshman season, I think he's going to compete. Again, we said it, you don't want necessarily a bunch of true freshmen starting, especially on offensive line, but I think he's going to compete, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But Jack Driscoll, the comp, a guy, again, that started every game in 2018, 2019, has had a good NFL career. So for Wilson, I think that's really lofty praise, but I think he can get there, man. So great pickup for Auburn. We've got a lot of activity here. I'm literally about to record 2 more videos. So Auburn's actually getting some commitments. But yeah, as always, thank you guys for watching. Keep it locked right here. TheBarnAuburn.com, T-Dubs Film Room, and I'll see you guys next time.